This is the second episode of When Connection Becomes Conditional. In the last episode, we talked about what happens when what you love gets minimized. When something meaningful to you is subtly diminished, dismissed, or treated like it just doesn't matter as much as it does. In this episode, I want to discuss a different kind of conditional connection. What happens when someone only wants to connect if it's on their terms, around their interests, or in ways that center them? This is something I don't think people notice right away because on the surface, it doesn't look like rejection. There's never a harsh no or a clear dismissal. Everything still sounds possible. So the response might sound like, sure, we can do that. It could be fun. Maybe sometime. And for a while, you believe it. It sounds believable because nothing is technically being shut down. But if you pay attention, there's an implied condition underneath it, specifically if it happens over and over and over again. Plans only move forward when they're interested. Conversations only deepen when it's something they care about. Time only opens up when it fits what they would have chosen anyways. And everything else, it just lingers. Not rejected, not accepted, just living in a perpetual almost, never coming to fruition. This is Caffeine and Clarity. This is one of those patterns that doesn't feel obvious until you've already adjusted yourself around it. Because you're not being told no. You're being met with a conditional yes. At first, you try to meet them there. You suggest things you think that they would like. You reshape your ideas. You wait for the right timing. You tell yourself, they're just busy, they just need more time. But slowly, you start noticing something. It's not about timing, it's about alignment. And not mutual alignment, their alignment. Because when it's something they want, there's no hesitation, no delay, no, we'll see. No, it moves. It happens. Effort shows up. But when it's something you bring, there's a leisureliness in response. Action stalls. The idea fades. And after a while, you stop bringing things to the table. Not because you don't care, but because it's exhausting to keep offering something that's never fully received. So you adapt. You go along more. You suggest less. You wait to be included instead of initiating. And from an outsider's perspective, it looks like you're an easygoing person. But internally, it feels like you're slowly disappearing. This kind of dynamic doesn't look or feel like rejection because it isn't harsh or abrupt. It's selective engagement. Connection, but only when it reflects them. And over time, that creates an imbalance that's hard to name. Because technically, they're still there. They still respond. They still show up. Just not for you. And this is where people start to shrink without realizing it. They stop inviting, stop suggesting, stop expecting anything to be met with enthusiasm. But because they've learned what gets returned and what doesn't. And the shift doesn't come from one big moment. It comes from noticing the pattern. Seeing that it was never about timing or misunderstanding. It was always about this unspoken and very real condition of, I'm in as long as it's something I'd choose. So again, it's not that they said no, it just never became a yes unless it was theirs. And that kind of connection can keep you in place longer than you expect because it almost feels like something real, almost feels mutual until you realize you've been meeting them fully and they've only been meeting you when it's convenient to them. Here's your sip of the day. Some relationships don't say no. They just never say yes to you. And that's something worth noticing. Not to make anyone malevolent, but to understand where your energy is actually being met and where it's just being tolerated. Before we close, if this episode made you think of a relationship, a moment, or even a version of yourself you had to silence, you're welcome to leave a comment or share it with someone who might need the language for something they've been feeling, but fully couldn't express. Sometimes clarity starts when we finally have words for what never felt obvious. And if Caffeine and Clarity has been a place for you to slow down and to notice what's underneath things, you're always welcome to stay connected by subscribing on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. And if you'd like to support me, feel free to buy me a coffee or buy yourself something from our shop. The links are below. In the next episode, we'll discuss the quiet pullback. What happens when you don't consciously decide to stop sharing? We'll talk about the difference between self-protection and disconnection, the grief of not being fully known, and how sometimes distance doesn't come from one big conflict. It comes from one repeated non-connection. Thanks for being here. This is Caffeine and Clarity.